Okay, we're recording session number 63 of New Testament Survey. We're in the book of Revelation, beginning in about chapter 13. I've got my notes are all cattywampus over here. We've been going through the sequence of what the commentators call 7 personages, or 7 characters in a row. These have told a story of Satan's hatred for Israel and for the Messiah of Israel. So Satan throughout all of history has demonstrated an anti-Christian, anti-Jewish bias. Where we find anti-Semitism and where we find the spirit of anti-Christ, we're going to find Satan lurking around in the backwards. The anti-Christian thought and bias and anti-Semitic, which is anti-Jewish propaganda and bias, is always an evil thing wherever we find it. It's destructive, it causes chaos. It downgrades the only really healthy approaches to ethics and morals and government and the economy and all of the rest that goes into making up a healthy society. And therefore, Satan is behind it. Satan is all in favor of things that are destructive to human society. He dreams of downgrading human society. So always we have to look for, when we're thinking about things that are anti-Christ or anti-Semitic or antisocial or destructive, we always have to be looking for Satan in the background. He is the destroyer. He is the accuser. He is the deceiver. By teaching false ideas, he leads people into false structures of thought and life that are ultimately destructive, that are ultimately evil at their core. And this is true whether we're in the last days or not. So that's what we're going to be looking at. But on that happy note, we're going to launch into chapter 13. We're 5 characters into the 7 character thing. I'm going to try to share this screen and then we will present. Oh, it worked. Okay. We're in this sequence from chapters 12:1 through 14:4. We're at chapter 13 and verse 1. And we're going to begin seeing the 2 beasts, a beast from the sea and the beast from the land. And typically we call the beast from the sea is representative of the Antichrist. The beast from the land is sometimes called the false prophet. The difficulty is that both of these monsters, if we can call them that, represent world systems, not necessarily empires or nations, but coalitions of power. The beast from the sea is essentially the political side of this power structure. The beast from the earth is the ideological or religious side of this huge power thing. The beasts from the sea and from the earth, because of their descriptions, are obviously connected with the Gentile powers of the time of the Gentiles in Daniel. So in Daniel, we saw the time of the Gentiles began with Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. Persia comes next. The Greco-Roman power comes next. And the fourth power, I believe, has to be the Caliphate or Islam. And Islam as a great power existed until 1923, at which point the Turkish Empire was defeated by the Allied powers of World War I, and the Caliphate was disbanded. Ever since that time, the devout Muslims, both Shiite and Sunni Muslims in the Middle East and elsewhere, have longed for a redevelopment of an Islamic caliphate under a single leader whom they call the Mahdi, a kind of a second Muhammad, who will be a great prophet, who will come to earth and demonstrate that Christianity is completely corrupt and wrong, that Judaism needs to be destroyed from the face of the earth, that Jesus is an imposter, and they will establish Sharia law throughout the world. This Mahdi character is the Antichrist version of the Messiah. So for Jews and Christians, the Messiah is a good guy who represents God. For the Muslim world, the Mahdi is Antichrist, always anti-Semitic, and anti-Western civilization, virulently anti-Western civilization. There are probably 40 parallels between the Muslim teaching of the Mahdi and the Christian teaching of the Antichrist. So I'm going to go with that. Scholars continue to dispute that structure, but that's how I see this. So that's how I'm going to teach it today. So we're going to start off with the beast from the sea. He's going to start out in verse 1 of chapter 13. I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads. Now, the 10 horns and the 7 heads remind us of the end time coalition that we see described in Daniel 2, Daniel 7. So you see a statue that ends up in mixed iron and clay, and the feet have 10 toes. How interesting. And at the end of the 10 toes, a great big rock smashes the 10 toes, becomes a mountain filling the world. Aha. In the context, the rock is Christ, and the mountain that fills the world is the Messianic kingdom. So the 10 horns, the 10 nation coalition of the end time, is the last Gentile power to control Jerusalem prior to the second coming of Christ and the establishment of the kingdom age. That's how it has to be understood. Daniel provides the key to open this up. So I saw this beast rising up out of the sea, 10 horns, 7 heads. And the 7 heads refer to the 7 who are left now after the Antichrist has done his thing. We're told again in the book of Daniel that a little horn, a usurper, will come and destroy 7 of the horn, or 3 of the horns, replace them by himself. So he becomes the leader of the whole group. He humiliates 3, becomes the head of the 10. He has 10 diadems on the horns and blasphemous names. And the beast I saw was like a leopard, feet like bears, his mouth like a lion's mouth. To the dragon, to it, the dragon gave his power. The dragon, of course, is Satan. So this 10-nation confederacy is driven by satanic power to back the throne and the authority. Clearly, this this is built on Daniel's prophecy. We have to understand this as the climax of the time of the Gentiles. Jesus said in Luke 21, this place, this Temple Mount, will be trodden underfoot by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles is completed. What John is describing here is the completion of the time of the Gentiles. Okay, and he goes on in verse 3. Let's see if I can make that happen. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?" The head obviously belongs to the 10. So it's a part of this last Gentile power. If the Gentile power, if this fourth power that becomes the 10-nation confederacy is Islam, which is what I'm suggesting, then the Antichrist is associated somehow with that Muslim power. I'm not sure we can say that the Antichrist is a Muslim. I think that would be a little overreach. He doesn't appear to be a particularly religious character. The false prophet is going to do all of his religious stuff, but this Antichrist beast is at the head of a system that will rule and have tremendous power for 3.5 years, the first half of the tribulation period. We're told about 42 months. The beast was given a mouth, uttering haughty and blasphemous words. It was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months, allowed by God. Let's be really clear here. When this thing happens, it will be because God has decided that the time has come. In verse 7, we're told that it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. And all who dwell on the earth will worship it. Everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. Okay, so the saints during this end time episode that we call the tribulation are the people of God, whether Jew or Gentile. Clearly, there are Jews present in this period. They survive into the tribulation period because they're not a part of the church. Gentiles who are not believers survive into the tribulation period. But many, many, many will come to Christ through a wide variety of means. One of the reasons that I've always supported a group called the Gideons, I really like them. They leave Bibles in hotel rooms, which seems like a silly thing to do. But what are people going to do during the tribulation period when they see how terrible things are? They're going to look for answers, and some of them will find those Bibles. Some of them will stop by our house and they'll find Bibles on the wall, and they'll read them. A lot of people will listen to the 144,000 evangelists, and a number of people will listen to the Moses and Elijah characters because they will get probably pretty good coverage. And during that time, there will be a lot of believers. They will become, along with the Jewish believers, they will become the target of this Antichrist authority. The phrase, all who dwell on earth will worship it, is not quite true. Well, it is true in the sense that it's in the Bible, and so we know it's true. But elsewhere in the same book, we're going to learn that there is continued conflict between the Antichrist and the saints. And many of them will be put to death during this first 3.5-year period of the tribulation. So if he is so insecure in his power base that he needs to kill people in large numbers, he's not in control. The Antichrist is not going to take over the whole world. He will try to. That's his goal, but he will not. He will not succeed in that. He'll be destroyed before that can happen. He'd like that. Worship, of course, everyone on the earth will be required to worship the beast. Now, worship, of course, involves submission, not necessarily religious, but submission. Rules will be made. You must do this. You must avoid that. You may not go here. You must go there. You'll have to show your documents in order to take part in the economy. He's going to try to get submission from everyone, but not everyone will submit. Some will die in the process, others will survive and go on into the latter part of this tribulation period. So it's kind of an ugly picture thus far. There's the Antichrist. When we get down to verse 11, we see the beast from the earth, who is often called the false prophet. I saw another beast rising out of the earth with 2 horns like a lamb. It spoke like a dragon. Okay, 2 horns like a lamb. So it's a lamb it's a dragon in lamb's clothing. Is that how we want to call this guy? Is trying to look like a Christ character, but he's really not. He's actually a really, really bad guy. He's telling the people doctrines of demons. And again, if you ever want to take the time to compare the doctrinal foundations of Christianity with the doctrinal foundations of Islam, you'll see that Islam is a patchwork of lies, and much of it is extremely corrosive and destructive lies. These are doctrines of demons. So another beast rising out of the earth had 2 horns like a lamb, spoke like a dragon, exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence, and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. Okay, the first beast has a mortal wound that is healed. If the beast is the reborn Islamic Caliphate. The Caliphate was destroyed in 1923. It is the desire of Muslims worldwide to reestablish a universal Muslim Caliphate. The head of that will be the great Caliph himself, the Caliph Mukhtar, or the Mahdi, the great final Caliph, the representative of Allah on earth. Kind of an ugly idea. And if we can understand the mortal wound of the caliphate being the destruction of the caliphate in 1923, the rebirth of the caliphate will be like a resurrection. And anyway, the false prophet character will be able to perform great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of the people. So the ability to do miracles, including really spectacular miracles like Elijah could do, is given to the false prophet. The fact that these miracles are satanically inspired and satanically empowered ought to give us pause. When people today come claiming that they can do miracles, we really ought to wonder who they're representing. The biblical miracles were done with a specific purpose. That purpose was accomplished. We shouldn't be looking for miracles. When people come claiming to be doing miracles, we really ought to wonder who sent them, because God doesn't promise any more miracles. Once in a while, he will do a miracle on his own nickel. But for a believer to call down fire from heaven, no, that's not going to happen. Not in our day. Okay, let's see what's next. That thing you see in the back is, I think that's called a QR code. It's like a barcode, only more complicated. Also, the false prophet causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. Okay, the mark of the beast is something that we don't know. We don't know what that's going to be. We're given the number of his name in verse 18. His number is 666. 3 sixes is symbolic of a perfect man. So 3 is kind of the number of God, and 6 is the number of man, because man was created on the 6th day, supposedly. And so the Antichrist is a kind of a God-man, or claims to be. 666, we don't really know what it means. The enforcement of the rule here is that everybody has to have a mark, some kind of a document, whether this is a tattoo or a microchip, or we don't know what. Maybe we can carry it on our cell phones. I don't know. Is a kind of a universal identity card that demonstrates a submission to the power of the beast. The underlying point here is a kind of state control of the economy. Nobody can buy or sell. Nobody can transact business. For example, you can't get on an airplane unless you show your document, your credentials. I believe that we're in a part of world history where very powerful forces are doing a trial run of this right now. If it comes to pass that we have to show a vaccination proof in order to do business or to get on transportation, the powers that be are going to notice how well it works and what they need to do to improve on the efficiency of this control. State control of the economy and of society is always characteristic of the Antichrist. We can say that it is anti-Christian, whether or not we are in the end time. State control of the economy, state control of thoughts is always a bad thing. And liberty is God's design. I believe I've introduced the word eleutheria, the Greek concept of liberty. I ought to continue in my life choosing to do the right thing without external control. I'm not doing the right thing because the state tells me to. I'm doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, because I'm a servant of God and I want to glorify him. Uh, the only real freedom is an independence from external control, but choosing to do the right thing anyway. If we choose to sin, and sin even more when we're not under the control of the beast, then of course we deserve what we get. Societies which choose to live like the devil deserve the governments that that come into being, right? And it's just the way it is. During the end time, people everywhere will celebrate the rise of the Antichrist kingdom and power, because finally, at long last, there will be law and order. But of course, there won't be. The chaos will get worse because the state can never control it all. It will just get worse and worse and worse and worse. Liberty is God's design. Bondage and ultimately chaos is Satan's plan. And when we see the surrounding society descending into bondage to whatever kind of nice people try to take control, and chaos as riots happen in the streets, we know that Satan is growing in his control. Western civilization is in a bad way right now. I'm not at all sure that this isn't the tribulation period and the Antichrist hasn't arrived, but I do believe that we're in a trial run. I think Satan is seeing if he can make all of the pieces fall into place, because when the moment comes, he'll have to be ready to go. Is the barcode the mark of the beast? No, but it could be. Is the cell phone the mark of the beast? No, but it could be. Is a vaccine passport the mark of the beast? No, but it could be. And I think the world's governments are getting ready to put it all together. But there's still some good news in the book of Revelation. Only a little bit, but there is some. And I looked, and behold, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven like the roar of many waters, and like the sound of great thunder. And the voice I heard like the sound of harpists, and they were singing a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and before the elders. And no one could learn that song except the 144,000. Okay, this is an interesting group of people. This is the 144,000 Jewish evangelists who will be called by God during the tribulation period and will be particularly protected by God during this terrible period. It will fall to them to take the message of the kingdom into all the world. So I'm looking forward to that. I think they're going to have a great adventure, and many of them are going to die in the process. We'll see them in heaven. There's no question about it. Those who are martyred out will be able to shake their hands and listen to their stories, and it's going to be quite the story indeed. This photograph was taken in Jerusalem. This is the Western Wall. And this particular plaza would be a good place. You can only get about 4,000 or 5,000 people in this one area. To get 144,000 will take the whole Temple Mount. But I think God can arrange for that. So that's that bit in verse 6. We see an interlude in between the sixth character and the seventh event, and so there's an interlude here that's going to go from 14:6 to 15:8, and it involves a number of difficult things. We got a message from three angels. And I'm going to start at verse 6. And I saw another angel flying directly overhead with an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation and tribe and language and people. I've always liked that verse. The gospel is not unique to Christianity. It is eternal. It is the good news that by trusting God's completed work, we can have salvation and an eternal relationship with him. This is good news whether you're Jew or Gentile, or for that matter, Muslim. The eternal gospel will be proclaimed to every nation and tribe and language and people, everyone who dwells on the planet. There are many times in the prophetic literature when it's right to say that the nations refers to a fairly small part of the earth. Sometimes the passage makes it clear that the whole planet is in view. And when we're talking about the eternal gospel, it's obviously going to the whole world. And I'll mention this again. We live in an era of history which is unique. For the first time in all of history, it is in fact possible, technically possible, for the gospel to be preached to everyone on earth. We can do that today. We can actually travel to those places, and we can actually speak with people in all of the parts of the earth. Not everybody is going to listen. Most will not, but the preaching can finally happen. And I visualized 144,000 Jews, these Jewish evangelists during the tribulation period, trying to set up their tribulation version of a Zoom connection. We can do it today, and certainly it will be possible at that time. Or perhaps one of them will walk over to the local airport and try to figure out how to start up that little Cessna 185 that's sitting there. The Christian missionary who owned it is long gone. And he's going to wonder, if I want to take the gospel out to that little village so far away, how can I get there? This airplane would probably help. I hope you can find a flight instructor because that's not an easy thing to do. At any rate, we have the technology today and never have before. And he said, this angel said, fear God, give him the glory, because the hour of judgment has come. Okay, so this is it. And then we get a second angel, and then a third angel, followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast or it and its image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he will also drink the wine of God's wrath. Poured full strength into the cup of his anger, he will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Okay, this message is a message for the followers of the beast, and it's a message of doom. This is the message of judgment. The time has come. Now, I want to make something really clear. When we're looking at this mark of the beast, one, we don't know what the mark of the beast will be. Okay. Some believers today worry about inadvertently getting the mark of the beast by picking up a vaccination passport or using a credit card or putting a QR code on their cell phone, that they will inadvertently get the mark of the beast. Don't worry about it. Here's why. The mark of the beast will be made available by the Antichrist himself during the tribulation period. Now, it may well be deceitful, it may well be innocuous, it may well be something technical that's actually a really good idea, but it's not available yet. It will only be available during the tribulation period. And as Paul said over in the Second Thessalonian epistle, that day will not come until the apostasy comes first, widespread departure from the faith. Lots of people who had called themselves Christians who are walking away from Christianity. We see that in some parts of the world, but not others. And the man of sin is revealed. That's the Antichrist himself. Revealed means the lid is taken off and he is revealed for who he is. The beast will come up out of the sea and it will be clear to everyone. In those same epistles, Paul makes it clear that the church will be taken up and out of the way. He who now restrains will be taken out of the way. The restrainer is the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit will leave with the church. When the church is gone, there will be no one left but those who are unbelievers or those who are going to become the tribulation saints. That's not us. This is not our place. So I think we should always be careful submitting to broadly claimed state power over anything. But I think we're overreacting if we believe that a passport or a credit card or something is the mark of the beast. I think that the world's powers are trying out technology, but I don't think there's a danger to believers in this. There's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So we go on in this chapter to an interesting image, the image of the reapers, and I'm going to start at verse 14 of chapter 14. And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, seated on the cloud, one like a son of man. The Son of Man has got to be Christ, with a golden crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. A sickle is a curved knife used to cut grain. Now, today we use heavy machinery to do this job. But in ancient times, people would go out, even actually up until fairly modern times, people would go out with a thing like a machete or a bolo and cut their grain. People still do that in many parts of the world today. And another angel came out of the temple, calling with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, "Put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is fully ripe." And so he who sat on the cloud swung his sickle across the earth, and the earth was reaped. Not a pretty sight. And it's like a grape harvest. Verse 19, the angel swung his sickle across the earth and gathered the grape harvest of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood flowed from the winepress as high as a horse's bridle for 1,600 stadia. A stadia is the length of a stadium, which has got to be at least 100 meters. And 1,600 stadia that's a terrible depth of blood. That's an awful sight. So the picture here is a horrendous judgment. Which particular judgment, we're not told. During the tribulation period, probably. Is it hyperbole and exaggeration for effect? Well, probably. Nevertheless, terrible judgment is coming, and that's the picture as it comes. And at this point, here comes another sign in heaven. This one is even more amazing, because now we're going to see 7 angels with 7 plagues which are the last. Okay, so far we've seen 7 seals on a scroll. And we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opening up the 7th opens up 7 trumpets. And we hear 7 trumpets blown. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Louis Armstrong blows that last trumpet. And then an interlude with 7 persons. And once we're done with that, we're going to see 7 more plagues. And the 7 plagues are 7 bowls of wrath. And that will begin in chapter 16. So this is all bad. The 7 plagues that are revealed here are the last, for with them the wrath of God is finished. So when the 7 bowl judgments are finished, that's the end of the wrath of God. We saw that the wrath of God began with the opening of the first seal. So the 7s are a depiction of the wrath of God. That's important for theological reasons. Scholars have disagreed about when the tribulation becomes the wrath of God. There was a scholar a few years ago, Jewish Christian scholar, who argued that the rapture would come before the wrath of God, but that the wrath of God didn't start until 3/4 of the way through the tribulation period. And he bases that on something. I've forgotten his argument. The argument I've been making here is that the entire 7-year tribulation period represents the wrath of God. God is allowing Satan to have tremendous latitude for damage on the earth, is allowing Satan to do terrible things to the earth and to the people of the earth. And that accomplishes the wrath of God. Verse 2, and I saw what appeared to be a sea of glass mingled with fire, and also those who had conquered the beast and its image and the number of its name, standing beside the sea of glass with harps of God in their hands. So the sea of glass is the same as the image that we've seen before. This takes us back to Ezekiel. This is the throne room image. The sea of glass mingled with fire. Interesting. Some places it's called crystal. Sometimes it's called a great expanse, like fire. What is it really? Well, we don't know. When we get to heaven, it's going to be one of those really interesting things to behold. And those who have conquered the beast and its image, standing beside the sea of glass with harps, are those who've come out of the great tribulation period. So kind of a sad thing. It means they died. And they are martyrs of the period. And they sing a song to the Lamb in verses 3 and 4. In verse 5, after this I looked, the sanctuary of the tent of witness in heaven was opened. Out of the sanctuary came 7 angels with 7 plagues, clothed in bright linen, with golden sashes, and one of the 4 living creatures gave the 7 angels 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God, who lives forever and ever. And the sanctuary was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power. And no one could enter the sanctuary until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels was finished. Okay, that reminds us of the Isaiah 6 vision again of the throne room of God, the angels and all the smoke and so on. Chapter 16 through 18 introduces us to the bowls, the bowl judgments. Uh, the bowl judgments are like they're like the other sevens that we've already seen. There's a sequence of 4, and then a sequence of 2, and then a 7th. And the climax with the 7. And it begins here in verse 1. I heard a loud voice from the temple telling the 7 angels, go and pour out on the earth the 7 bowls of the wrath of God. So it's real clear. This is more wrath as is coming. And this series of 7 takes the tribulation period to its completion. It starts out with painful sores. We're not told what kind of sores. We're just told that it's painful for the worshipers of the beast. One of the things that the beast and the false prophet will have told people was that dependence on the beast's system will cure them from their diseases. And this will turn out not to be true. Satan is not good at anything except lies. Secondly, the sea will be turned to blood and everything will die. That's an imitation. Well, that's actually a visualization of the plagues on Egypt. Moses could do that to the Egyptians. The sea is turned to blood. The rivers and the springs of water become blood. Now, in both cases, whether the sea and the springs of water become actual blood or just become red and noxious doesn't really matter very much. This is, again, always the language of phenomena. John is describing what he is seeing. And so the sea turns red, and the waters of the rivers and springs turns red, and no one can drink anything, and everyone is upset, and everybody is unhappy. And then the sun begins to overheat. The 4th bowl is the magnification of the heat of the sun. Global warming is one of these popular things in mass culture today. Everybody thinks that because people are breathing too much and we're driving our cars, that we're causing the world to overheat. That is frankly a silly notion. Carbon dioxide is a very, very minor part of the atmosphere. It's a minor part of what is called greenhouse gas. 99% of greenhouse gas is water vapor in the form of clouds and fog. And so when you get a cloudy day, if the sun is shining brightly, the clouds tend to hold the heat longer into the evening. Everybody knows that. That's what greenhouse does. The increase of carbon dioxide by 0.0003% over a period of 100 years doesn't make any difference to that. It cannot possibly make any difference to that. Climate changes. Everybody agrees to that. Climate has changed naturally, routinely and cyclically over the last thousands of years, and everybody knows that. The demagogues, the idiots who teach that we have to destroy the economy of the earth and send people into poverty because of climate change are operating on behalf of the devil. I really despise these people. They're really wrong. What does cause climate change is the sun. Particularly sunspots. We're at a sunspot minimum right now, and as the sunspots increase, we're going to see a natural increase in the energy of the sun. We'll see some slight variations in the climate because of that. But hot days in Italy are not climate change. Dry weather in Idaho is not climate change. The climate is always constantly varying all over the planet, and that's normal. And God has control over this until he chooses to cause a terrible problem. That's what's being described here. So this fourth bowl of wrath is a shifting of the limits on the power of the sun. And so terrible damage will happen. And then we're told in verses, well, let's see, let's go on to 1 through 8, 16, 1 through 8. Okay, let's go on to the fifth angel. He's in verse 10. Let's see if I can make it work. There it goes. The fifth angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast, and its kingdom was plunged into darkness. Again, this is Exodus all over again. This is Moses and the darkness. The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. Now again, if you're standing in Mesopotamia and you look toward the east, you're going to see Persia. Beyond Persia, Pakistan. To the north of Persia and Pakistan, you're going to find the Central Asian republics, what used to be called the Silk Road, Tashkent and the fabled cities of the caravans. From Asia, the silk came all the way to Mesopotamia. From there, it would go all the way to Europe. And this was a tremendous trade route throughout all of history. The Mongol Empire was built over that Silk Route to dominate the largest land area of any empire in the history of the world. So this isn't a minor thing. At the far end of the Silk Route is China. Now, I don't know how all of this works, and I'm not sure where China fits in all of this. The picture that we saw earlier was of an army of 200 million. The Chinese have bragged that they could field 200,000 soldiers, but they could field them. They could put them on their, maybe they can put boots on everybody. But arming 200 million soldiers would be a terrible project, and transporting them would be an enormous project. And I don't think even China can do it. Nevertheless, 200 million is the number. If that's a symbolic number, okay. The Central Asian republics and Persia and Pakistan and Afghanistan are today all Muslim nations, but they're not going to come up with anywhere close to 200 million. So there's some questions as to what this could mean, but it's very significant in several places in the book of Revelation that a great army from the east will participate in an invasion of Israel with the intention of destroying Jerusalem. That's just clear. So it's the spot. It's the place where they intend to go. Very significantly, the Muslim literature also describes the armies of the Mahdi joining together the Ummah, all of the people of Islam from all of the world, they say, attacking from the east and coming on Israel from the north and from the south in order to attack Jerusalem and destroy the power of the Messiah in Jerusalem. Why is Jerusalem such an important place to Muslims? Muhammad didn't grow up there. He wasn't born there. He wasn't crucified there. There's nothing important about Jerusalem. There was no reason to build a mosque in Jerusalem. And yet Muslims are fixated on possessing Jerusalem. We're going to see this continuing to come. And as this passage goes on, we've got the fifth and sixth angels. We'll go on to verse 13. 13, let's see what I've got here. And I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon and out of the mouth of the beast, three unclean spirits like frogs. Okay, there's where we are. That was verse 13. I don't know what the Bible has about frogs, but they always have a negative flavor to them. Anyway, we've got three unclean spirits like frogs, and they are demonic spirits performing signs. There's those miracles again, who go abroad to the kings of the whole world. I mean, there's demonic frogs, okay, who can perform miracles. I mean, I would pay money to watch that show. I mean, this sounds like fun. Performing signs, they go abroad to the kings of the whole world. The phrase there means the whole land, which is not necessarily anything more than the entire Muslim world or the entire Middle East, to assemble them for battle on the great day of God Almighty. And they assembled them at the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon. Armageddon is from Hebrew, Har, mountain, and Megiddo, which is the name of the city that is there. Megiddo sits on the great international route that leads from Egypt to Damascus and on to Mesopotamia. The great international trade route goes right past Megiddo, where Megiddo sits on the north side of the Carmel Ridge in the Jezreel Valley of northern Jerusalem. Har Megiddo is not a reference to the occupation mound of Megiddo, but rather to the mountain of Carmel, the Carmel Ridge. The Carmel Ridge runs from Haifa on the Mediterranean Sea all the way to the Jordan Valley, where it ends in Mount Gilboa. So from Mount Gilboa out to the Mediterranean, there's this ridge line that is fairly steep, fairly rugged. It's not terribly high. It's maybe 200 meters high, 300 meters high. It's not a terribly high set of mountains, but it is a major barrier to wheeled transport. If you're going to bring trucks and tanks and heavy equipment to invade Israel, which is something that would have to be done in the modern day, you would have to come past Megiddo. You would have to come from the north. You would have to come through the Golan Heights from Damascus and then take a south turn, and you would cross the Jezreel Valley. Then you would have to cross through the Carmel Ridge. And the easiest place to do that is at Megiddo. That's why the city of Megiddo has always sat there. The city of Megiddo has been destroyed by a variety of armies 28 times. Our earliest battle there dates to before the Bible. It dates to before Abraham. During biblical times, it was there were battles there at the foot of Megiddo a dozen or so times. In modern times, the battles that have been fought there are very important. Napoleon fought here. He called this plain the greatest battlefield on the planet. Later on, General Allenby of the British Army in 1918 fought a battle against the Turkish army at Megiddo. Armageddon, the Mount of Megiddo, or this vast plain that you see in the background here, that's a dove on the site of Megiddo. This is one of the great battlefields on the face of the earth. It is the natural final defensive line. It's a choke point for the main road from the north to Jerusalem. For an attack from the north with a major army to make it to Jerusalem, they must come past the Jezreel Valley. The Israelis have always known this. The Israelis know that this pass has to be fortified. I've visited this place many times. Every once in a while, you'll see evidence of the defensive armament. You'll see one of the siege guns come rolling out of its cave and then back into it again, or some piece of heavy equipment dug in behind a berm and the men training outside. How would you like to wait all your life, spend all of your energy waiting for the Battle of Armageddon to be fought right on your ground? This is the place. The armies of the nations who are involved will arrive from the north and from the south, and they will focus on the invasion of Jerusalem, the conquest of Jerusalem. The Muslims for many years have said Jerusalem is non-negotiable. That will be our capital. This will be our state. Palestine will be from the desert to the sea, which means that the Jews are all going to have to be killed. And they want that more than anything. And as long as the restrainer is in the earth, I think there will be pushback on that. The last great Christian nation on the planet that has been an ally of Israel is the United States. And we are in a position now as the United States to turn our backs on Israel. If that happens, all bets are off because at that point, the Battle of Armageddon could happen. We're that close. Jerusalem has always been a key to the end time. It has always been a key to worldwide conflict. And people who visit Jerusalem wonder, why is this place so important? It's not commercially, it's nowhere. Apart from Judaism and Christianity, well, I guess we're pretty important. But the Muslims never did anything there except to build a mosque, a bunch of mosques, and demand that nobody else come on their holy place. But there's nothing holy about it for Islam. Okay, let's look at the seventh bowl, and that's where we're going to end for the day. In chapter 16 and verse 17, the angel says, the seventh angel poured out his bowl, and a loud voice came from the throne saying, "It is done." And there were flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, a great earthquake such as had never been. So great was this earthquake, and the great city was split into three parts. And the cities of the nations fell. And God remembered Babylon the Great to make her drain the cup of the wine of the fury of his wrath. Okay, fascinating stuff here. The question that we have to ask, as this seventh seal is open, or the seventh bowl is dumped out, he says, it's finished. This is it. This is the end. We are now at the climax of history. And the great city was split apart, and the cities of the nations fell. We're not told which city was the great city. Some have argued Jerusalem, possible. Some have argued Babylon. That also is possible, and I think more probable, because in the next chapters, the next two chapters, 17 and 18, we're going to see the fall of Babylon. And that's an extended note about Babylon. two cities. I think it was Charles Dickens who wrote a famous book years ago called A Tale of Two Cities. He was talking about Paris and London. And I think the Bible is a tale of two cities. And those two cities are Jerusalem and Babylon. Jerusalem, the city of God, and Babylon, the city of Nimrod, the city of man, the city of Antichrist. And in some very real ways, Jerusalem is symbolic, and so is Babylon. If you look at those two names in the Bible, you'll find that Jerusalem is the most frequently mentioned. Jerusalem is mentioned several thousand times in the Bible. Number two, by several orders of magnitude, is Babylon. Those are the two most important cities in the Bible. If we draw a line between the two cities and then draw an ellipse to cover probably 700 miles in every direction from Jerusalem and Babylon, you're going to see most of the Muslim world. Jerusalem lives in a tough neighborhood, right? And Babylon is the chief enemy all the way through. Yeah, let's see what I've got in the rest of 6. Okay, 17, 1 through 17, through 21. And great hailstones, boy, is it going to be big. Great hailstones, about 100 pounds each, fell from heaven. They cursed God because of the plague of hail, because it was so bad. Why was it bad? Okay, we're going to stop there. A lot of this, I realized, a lot of this is figurative language. A lot of this is language that can be understood in a variety of ways. I'm not going to pretend that I have all of the answers. As I've mentioned before, like a lot of American evangelicals, I hold a dispensational way of understanding the Bible. That means I take the Bible literally, and I believe that Israel and the church are different entities. Because Israel has a different future than the church, the tribulation period is not for the church. The tribulation is for Israel and for the Gentiles, for the nations. That helps me make sense of the details, but it still doesn't answer all the questions. As we walk farther into the book of Revelation, next, I expect by Wednesday, we'll be able to finish up the book of Revelation. I'm looking forward to the descriptions of heaven and eternity and the New Jerusalem. And if you're like me, you get a little tired of bulls and sores and blood and all the bad stuff. Descriptions of big armies filling up the Euphrates River. I mean, what fun is that? There's a terrible time to come. I'm convinced that that's not for the church. That's not designed for us. That's designed for the ungodly world. There is a terrible judgment coming that will climax history. Right? And for us, we will be spectators. We'll see more of that as we come together again on Wednesday. Let me see if I can unmute everybody. And I'm going to say bye-bye for now. We like you guys. I think I can see what I've got here. See if I can get all the sound. There we go. Now I should be able to hear everybody. Nope. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I can hear everybody.
Thank you, Dr. John.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks, guys.
you.
We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you,
Thank you
Donna.
again.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Donna.
Okay, I see Dawn there. I see Oscar. Hello, Oscar.
Good night, everyone.
Oscar, have your meeting with the elders and let me know about getting doctrine ready.
Okay.
We'll see what we need to do next. God bless everybody. We'll see you on Wednesday.
Bye-bye.
Wow, Dr.
Bye-bye.
John.
Thank you.